Well, the Springboks are not the only national team that's in action tomorrow. The Proteas will face India in the second T20. India soundly beat the Proteas by 61 runs in the first of 4 T20 matches at Kingsmead in Durban last night. But the hosts have a chance at redemption when the two sides meet at St. George's Park in Gqeberha in conditions which could suit the visitors. And to talk about this series and our summer of cricket that is coming up, we've roped in award-winning journalist Khayiso Tshwaku, who also doubles up as a commentator and analyst here at SABC and is also with Sport 24. And there he is there. Good evening, Khayiso. Thank you for speaking to us tonight.
Good evening, Tabitha. Good evening to the viewers.
The Proteas were soundly beaten last night by India. Did the margin of the defeat surprise you, considering that the Proteas' main players were back for this series and India don't have their strongest team?
Well, I wouldn't say that India don't have their strongest side, because remember that with Virat Kohli and Rohit Sharma retired now, these are the guys who are always on the fringes. Your Rinku Singhs, your Abhishek Sharmas. So they're always circling there and thereabout. Now that they've got an opportunity to play, they're making the most of it. But look, 60-odd runs, T20 loss is a sound defeat. And I think once India crossed 160, I always realized that with their spin armory, it was always going to be difficult. But again, it showed basics of having one player getting a score and converting. I mean, if you look at India's 202 for 8, 107 of those runs came from Sanju Samson. And that's the one thing that was lacking from South Africa. So, again, Sanju's been around for quite a while. And again, it showed the virtues of you get in, stay in, go big, and then let everyone else bet around you, which is effectively what they did. So, I mean, then after that, 203 was always going to be a tasting chase. I mean, one of the things that Quinton Friend said in the pitch report, he was just concerned that maybe the nature of the pitch could change, especially the fact that the game starts at 5 p.m. and not 6 p.m. So there will be a twilight period for one team to bat. In South Africa, they'd have to bat in the twilight period. If you look at either Markram's dismissal in particular, the swing that probably was not quite available for South Africa's fast bowlers was there for Arshdeep Singh. I mean, Arshdeep bowled an in-swinger that actually Aiden Markram nicked. So, look, it was one of those where India backed their structures and they came off for them. But I think South Africa were just looking at the scoreboard 95% of the time. And once India having 3 quality spinners in Varun Chakravarti and Ravi Bishnoi, they had that game sewn up.
Yeah, and obviously hindsight is always the best teacher, but there have been questions about the decision made at the toss and the decision to chase at Kingsmead. What do you make of that?
It's a tricky one, because if you go back to the Australia series, South Africa would win the toss, bat first, score big, and still be on the receiving end. Australia would win the toss, get Australia to bat first, still be on the receiving end. Also, as you've seen in the SA20, it's probably now the best gauge of day-night games in the day-night 20 games at Kingsmead. Teams that have generally batted second have actually quite prospered, even though times there have been some really close chases of big scores. The Kingsmead pitch has tended to play rather differently as compared to how it generally plays for 4-day cricket, because in the lead up to the game, there was a 4-day game between the Dolphins and Western Province. 25 of the 40 wickets in that game fell to spin with Western Province winning. So I think at the end of the day, Kingsmead is, yes, the nature of how that score is playing is quite confounding at the moment. So it's generally become a look up kind of surface, where if you look up and there's clouds, you bowl first, and if you look up, it's clear. You actually take your chance at bat first. That decision was also influenced by the weather that was around. Fortunately, the rain did stay away, but it didn't quite have an impact on the result at the end.
They move to Gqeberha tomorrow, St. George's Park. We know that they say it's the closest pitch to the subcontinent here in South Africa. Does it still play like that? And is it a pitch that you see favouring the visitors?
Actually, it's Durban that plays more subcontinental than PE does. I mean, look, I'll reference to the most recent game that took place at Gqeberha, where there was a high-scoring draw between the Warriors and the Dragons, even though, yes, that game went down to the 4th innings, and the Dragons had to bat well to save that particular game. So I think, again, it depends on, again, the climatic conditions. If the wind comes in from the interior, it becomes quite the place to bat on. But if the wind whips off from the sea, then it becomes quite the place to bowl on. So again, the conditions, the climatic conditions play a very big role in PE. However, though, I think the bigger concern is the weather tomorrow. There has been rain forecast for the better part of the day tomorrow. So one hopes that it stays away long enough for there to be a game tomorrow.
And what kind of a team then do you expect the Proteas to put up at St. George's Park?
Well, look, I don't expect them to actually make significant changes. It's a 4-match series, so there's still enough scope to experiment. Look, again, when you look at the series in totality, it is a series that is a first step towards the start of the 2026 T20 World Cup. And most probably, if you want to be playing India, you want to be playing them in coastal conditions that are probably, which will be somewhere close to what will be seen in Sri Lanka when they play there in 2026. Remember that South Africa still have another 3 T20s against Pakistan in the build-up to the ODI series that leads to in the all-important test series that will take place over Boxing Day and New Year's. So there is another 3 matches where South Africa can actually also try sort out the combinations. Then we'll use the bulk of 2025 after the Champions Trophy in particular to sort out the eggness for the 2026 T20 World Cup.
But should they not be expected to be winning, even though they are building Khayiso? Because after the T20 final against India, the Proteas lost the T20 series to the West Indies. They drew with Ireland also, and it's been a disappointing run since then.
Yeah. No, it's a tricky one because, I mean, the Boks are probably the one team who've got that winning while developing concept right. It doesn't happen for all teams because you can actually see the bigger picture that Rob Walter is trying to work towards in terms of giving players opportunities, giving younger players opportunities, giving the older players probably their last chance salute, because also there are a few 34, 33-year-olds will probably be playing in their last tournaments, and you also need to have a further eye cast on the 2027 World Cup and the following ICC events. So it's an imperfect science. I mean, we remember that when you hark back to 2022, when Jock Dinaba made a raft of changes for the Bloom test against Wales. They lost that test 12-11. But then when you look back at the changes that were made and how many players then actually became a core part of the World Cup and it became a significant part of the current group now, those are kind of bigger picture images that Rob Walter is trying to play in his mind. However, though, development does not look good when you're not winning, because at the end of the day, you have to be tested in the iron heat of an international, and that's what the Proteas right now aren't quite passing it. Remember that they drew that series against Ireland. They lost the series against the West Indies. But if you look back at what the West Indies are doing, the West Indies are pretty much trying to get their best players together for the bulk of the games. Even if you look at what they're doing with the England series, England pretty much picked a very callow team for the ODI series. The West Indies tried to get probably their best players together. So teams are on different development trajectories at the moment. Whereas you can see with the Proteas that they are having one eye on the present, one eye on the future. But the present does require results to justify the bigger picture, looking brighter for the future.
Yeah, and the fans also want results, because fans support a winning team, and that's what they're doing. That's what the Springboks are doing, and that's why the country is behind them. But just finally, there's a big sum of cricket coming up with the Pakistan and the Sri Lanka coming to these shores later on. Is that exciting for you? How exciting is that?
Well, look, it's very simple. 3 from 4 gets South Africa into the World Test Championship final. So it doesn't get more exciting than this. And actually, one of my biggest fears for the Proteas is not exactly the pitches. I mean, in speaking to Enoch Nkwe on Tuesday at the launch of the Fly Safe partnership, he did say that they're not going to tinker with the pitches in Gqeberha and in Durban. Remember that when South Africa played Sri Lanka back there in 2019, they lost both tests and ended up losing to an Asian team for the first time at home. So my key concern is just the weather now, because if they are able to get 5-10 good days of Test cricket in Gqeberha and in this thing and in Durban for those games, I expect South Africa to win those games. Centurion may be tricky, but even then, Centurion has lost time to weather, but Test matches have still been completed here. So my only concern among the excitement, because South Africa won 3 or 4-3. If they do a 4-0 clean of those Test matches, they eliminate Sri Lanka from that World Test Championship race, but they also put a firm foot forward. They beat Sri Lanka 2-0, it's a foot and a half in. They beat Pakistan 2-0, it's both feet in, and then they won't even need to worry about everything else that happens between England and New Zealand, South Africa, Australia, and Pakistan and Australia. So yes, so there's a lot happening, but the fate is in their own hands.
Okay, 2 tests against Sri Lanka and 2 tests against Pakistan coming up for the Proteas, but they need to get past India first. Thank you to Khayiso Tshwaku for joining us here. The second T20 will be in Gqeberha tomorrow, and we hope the weather or the rain stays away then. They can have a full game, the people of Gqeberha at St. George's Park.